Former CIA and NSA Chief Michael Hayden facing backlash after comparing the current immigration policies of President Trump to Nazi Germany over the weekend, tweeting, quote, "Other governments have separated mothers and children." This statement under a black and white photo, of course, in front of the Auschwitz concentration camp. This is Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal joined critics by calling the administration's policies, quote, inhumane, among other things. Joining the panel now to discuss, Chris Bedford, the Daily Caller Foundation Editor-in-Chief, and Beverly Hallberg, District Media Group President. Beverly, let me start with you.
Sure.
You know, we heard throughout the presidential campaign, we heard throughout President Trump's presidency, the various comparisons to Nazi Germany, to Hitler, and we understand that emotions are very high, but when someone of that stature, like a former CIA director, makes that sort of comparison, I think it's irresponsible, even dangerous.
I would agree with you, and there's no doubt that this is an emotional issue to begin with when we're talking about these children and being separated from families. But one of the tips I always give to individuals who want to make some type of Holocaust analogy is if you're not actually talking about the Holocaust, don't use it. That's something that shouldn't be used for other issues. And here's where I think it's actually damaging. You were talking about Republican leaders, Ted Cruz, you were mentioning in your earlier segment, as being open and willing to pass legislation that unites these families. I think it's actually very damaging for those who want a bipartisan effort, because it makes people who are on the more left side, on the Democrat side, not seem genuine about them wanting to find a solution that everybody can agree with. So I think it's damaging all the way around.
Chris?
It doesn't make any sense, all this hyperbole, either. There's not a single crime in any civilized country that doesn't separate a parent from a child when somebody's got to be detained. If your dad steals a bike or if your mother steals a car, they have to separate the family unless they want to put them all together. When Barack Obama's administration tried to keep the families together before the Ninth Circuit knocked it down because of open borders advocates, all that resulted in was a massive surge in people who would come and they would rush the border because they knew that they would have to be caught and released because the Supreme Court wouldn't back them up or the Ninth Circuit wouldn't back them up. They have to figure out something, and Congress right now, I think, has to deal with it. If they want to set up detention centers that allow the whole family to be together and not with other inmates, then maybe that's a solution for Congress.
You know, Beverly, I do hope that this does spur Congress to some sort of solution, and instead of sort of this typical thing that both parties are usually guilty of, where they seize the high ground on something, or at least attempt to, and use that for political points rather than solutions. And I'm hearing fewer and fewer things about solutions, even though we have a lot of bills that are coming forward.
Yeah, and I hope if there is going to be a fix, it should be legislatively. I always get concerned when any president is asked to use executive order, or in this case, use the DOJ. You want your elected officials to pass legislation so that they can hear directly from you. Remember, this is an issue that greatly impacts border states as well. So while we see the emotional aspect of this, first of all, let's not forget that it is Health and Human Services who are taking some of these children. By the way, some of them who are victims of human trafficking. I realize we want to keep families together, but you really want to do this through a legislative fix if there is going to be a fix on this.
Christopher, how much pressure is there on President Trump, though, to move, if there's no congressional answer to this, if the Democrats continue to avoid any kind of legislation to keep the PR efforts going, how long can he stand in this position that he's in, regardless of all the things? Most people don't understand illegal entry or asylum seekers and all these different rules and points of entries and things like that. They just see these images and they're emotionally being pulled in a certain direction right now.
You're right, and the Democrats probably won't break off on that. We saw before when they just declined to vote for a DACA fix because it came with increased border security and Trump's wall. They didn't want to give him a win, and they have a lot of discipline on that. The American people are likely to hold the people who are in power accountable for this, especially when they find these images so moving. That's President Trump, that's the Republican Senate, that's the Republican House. If we get down into the nitty-gritty details, of course they need more Democrats in order to pass anything, but that's maybe not what the people are going to understand. However, Trump also has to be very careful on this, because the voters in the GOP who are most active, who are most motivated in this issue, are hawks in immigration, and they won't want to see him surrender on this issue to Democrats and emotional pleas without the facts being behind it.
Yeah, I tell you what, though, it's a tough one. Thank you both very much.